War in Sudan, a nation divided. The conflict has left a deep scar on the nation, affecting every aspect of life. Sudan, a nation in Northeast Africa, is grappling with a devastating internal conflict. This conflict has not only torn apart communities, but has also disrupted the social and economic fabric of the country. In April 2023, fighting erupted between the Sudanese Armed Forces, or SAF, and the Rapid Support Forces, known as RSF, a paramilitary group. The clashes have been intense and relentless, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. The roots of this conflict are complex, stemming from long-standing political, economic, and ethnic tensions. These tensions have been simmering for decades, and the current conflict is a manifestation of unresolved issues that have plagued Sudan for years. This power struggle has plunged Sudan into chaos, displacing millions of people and triggering a humanitarian crisis. Families have been torn apart, and many have been forced to flee their homes in search of safety. The conflict has exacerbated existing vulnerabilities, leaving millions food insecure and without access to basic necessities. Humanitarian organizations are struggling to provide aid, but the scale of the crisis is overwhelming. The fighting has also damaged critical infrastructure, including hospitals and schools, further deepening the crisis. The destruction of these essential services has made it even more difficult for the population to cope with the ongoing conflict. The conflict in Sudan is not simply an internal matter. It has significant regional implications, with neighboring countries being drawn into the fray. The instability in Sudan has the potential to destabilize the entire region. It has drawn in regional and international actors, some of whom have fueled the conflict by supplying weapons to the warring parties. The influx of arms has made the situation more volatile and has prolonged the fighting. This influx of arms has prolonged the fighting, escalated violence, and worsened the humanitarian crisis. The streets of Sudan have become battlegrounds, with civilians caught in the crossfire. The international community must act decisively to stop the flow of weapons into Sudan and work towards a peaceful resolution to the conflict. Diplomatic efforts are crucial in bringing an end to the violence and ensuring a stable future for Sudan. The lives of millions of Sudanese people hang in the balance. The world cannot turn a blind eye to their suffering. It is imperative that we come together to support Sudan in its quest for peace and stability. The conflict in Sudan is a stark reminder of the deadly consequences of the global arms trade. This trade, often shrouded in secrecy, has far-reaching impacts that extend beyond borders and affect countless lives. When powerful weapons fall into the wrong hands, the results are often catastrophic. These weapons, designed for maximum destruction, can turn a tense situation into a full-blown war, leaving behind a trail of devastation. The ongoing violence in Sudan is a tragic example of this reality. The country has been embroiled in conflict for years, with various factions vying for power and control, often with the aid of sophisticated weaponry. The global arms trade is a multi-billion-dollar industry, driven by profit and often lacking in transparency and accountability. This industry operates in the shadows, with deals made behind closed doors and little oversight. Major powers, including Russia, China, and the United States, are among the top arms exporters, often prioritizing economic interests over human rights concerns. These countries supply weapons to various regions, sometimes without fully considering the potential consequences. These weapons often end up in conflict zones, fueling violence and instability. The presence of advanced military equipment can escalate conflicts, making them more deadly and harder to resolve. In Sudan, the influx of weapons has had a devastating impact, prolonging the fighting and exacerbating the humanitarian crisis. The civilian population bears the brunt of this violence, with countless lives lost and communities destroyed. The easy availability of arms has emboldened warring factions, making peaceful resolution more difficult. Negotiations are often undermined by the presence of weapons, as factions feel empowered to continue fighting rather than seek compromise. The international community must take concrete steps to regulate the global arms trade and prevent weapons from reaching conflict zones like Sudan. This requires a coordinated effort and a commitment to prioritizing human lives over profits. This includes strengthening arms embargoes, promoting transparency in arms sales, and holding arms exporters accountable for the human consequences of their actions. Only through such measures can we hope to reduce the flow of weapons into conflict zones and mitigate the suffering they cause. In addition to regulating the arms trade, It is crucial to support peace-building efforts and provide humanitarian aid to those affected by conflict. Rebuilding war-torn communities and addressing the root causes of violence are essential steps towards lasting peace. By working together, the international community can make a difference. Through solidarity and cooperation, we can create a future where conflicts are resolved through dialogue and diplomacy, rather than through the barrel of a gun. Russia has played a significant role in fueling the conflict in Sudan by supplying weapons to the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF. These arms transfers are often part of broader geopolitical strategies, with Russia seeking to expand its influence in Africa. Russia's support for the RSF dates back to the regime of Omar al-Bashir, the former Sudanese dictator, ousted in 2019. During al-Bashir's reign, Russia secured lucrative contracts for gold mining in Sudan, a key source of revenue for the RSF. In exchange for access to Sudan's gold, Russia provided the RSF with a steady stream of weapons, including small arms, heavy machine guns, armored vehicles, and even fighter jets. These weapons have significantly bolstered the RSF's military capabilities, enabling them to challenge the Sudanese Armed Forces, or SAF, and prolong the conflict. Russia's actions in Sudan are a clear example of how a powerful nation can exploit a volatile situation for its own benefit, with little regard for the human consequences. Turkey's role in the Sudanese conflict is complex and often shrouded in secrecy. The nation has been strategically positioning itself in Africa, and Sudan is a key part of this broader geopolitical puzzle. While Turkey has officially denied arming either side, evidence suggests that Turkish-made weapons have ended up in the hands of both the Sudanese Armed Forces, or SAF, and the Rapid Support Forces, known as RSF. This dual presence of Turkish arms raises questions about the true extent of Turkey's involvement and its underlying motives. Turkey's involvement in Sudan stems from its growing economic and geopolitical ambitions in Africa. The country has been actively seeking to expand its influence across the continent, and Sudan, with its strategic location and resources, is a significant part of this strategy. Turkey has invested heavily in Sudan in recent years, seeking to expand its influence in the region. These investments include infrastructure projects, economic partnerships, and various development initiatives aimed at strengthening bilateral ties. Turkey's arms sales to Sudan have been criticized for lacking transparency and potentially violating a UN arms embargo on the country. The opaque nature of these transactions has led to international scrutiny and calls for greater accountability. The Turkish government has defended its actions, claiming that its arms sales are legal and do not contribute to the conflict. Officials argue that these deals are conducted within the bounds of international law and are aimed at supporting Sudan's legitimate defense needs. However, the presence of Turkish-made weapons on both sides of the conflict raises serious concerns about Turkey's role in fueling the violence. The dual use of these arms by opposing factions suggests a more complicated involvement than what is officially acknowledged. The international community must press Turkey to be more transparent about its arms sales to Sudan and ensure that its actions are not contributing to the suffering of the Sudanese people. Diplomatic efforts should focus on holding Turkey accountable and encouraging it to adopt more responsible practices in its dealings with conflict zones. The ongoing conflict in Sudan has had devastating effects on the civilian population, leading to a humanitarian crisis that requires urgent attention. The international community, including Turkey, must prioritize the well-being of the Sudanese people and work towards a peaceful resolution to the conflict. Peace talks and negotiations are crucial in addressing the root causes of the conflict and finding a sustainable solution. Turkey, with its significant influence in the region, has a responsibility to support these efforts and contribute to the stabilization of Sudan. In addition to its economic and military involvement, Turkey has also provided humanitarian aid to Sudan. This aid is essential in alleviating the suffering of those affected by the conflict and demonstrates Turkey's potential to play a positive role in the region. The path to peace in Sudan is fraught with challenges, but with concerted efforts from the international community, including Turkey, there is hope for a brighter future.